Hey, where have y'all been? Man, I really missed you guys. I'm glad you're back. Look, I have been super lazy making videos. I know in the last video I said I was going to make more content, but apparently I did not. But we're going to move forward from that, let bygones be bygones, and we're going to go on. What are we going to do? Buggy Tries is going into winter effect to where we're going to stay inside the workshop for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and we're going to make some stuff inside the workshop. We're going to maybe do some little wood carvings. We're going to maybe do some, I've got plans to make artwork out of silverware. I've got plans to make stuff out of nuts and bolts, little artworks. We're going to do a lot of artwork stuff. I even got plans that we can make a chef knife. We can use the little forge and make some forge knife, or who knows, we'll forge out something with the little forge. Today's plan is we're gonna make artwork out of that. You don't know what that is? That's a 1/4 nut and bolts. That is a 2-inch long 1/4 bolt with 1/4 brass nuts. We're gonna take and use 5 of these nuts and use this bolt, and we're gonna make a bee out of it. That's right, I said a bee. We're gonna turn it into a bumblebee, make it look like, probably about a life-size wasp, I guess you would say. Do I think I can do it? I think I can do it because I've worked on this. I think I've got it kind of perfected down to where I can show you how to do it. It is easy enough for you to do on your own if you have a few tools. You will need a workspace that you can make some dust in, because this will require some grinding and some noise. We love noise, don't we, guys? All right, here we go. So this is what we're going to need to make this project work. It's not going to be a lot. It's going to be simple. You can do this at home. You can do it anyway with what you have. So what I have here is I've made this little vise to hold a handheld drill. This handheld drill, it's just a little 1/4 inch or 3/8 handheld drill. I've had this thing for like 1,000 years. I think it's a Black & Decker, if that tells you how long I've had it. All the other things you'll need is you'll need a file. This is a big file, very aggressive. This works really fast. Smaller file, the smaller triangle file I use for shaping. You'll need probably 2 or 3 stages of sandpaper, which I go from 100 up to 600. And then I do finishing with this, which is basically really fine steel wool. Okay, also use this little vise that I bought off of Amazon. Very, very cheap. I want to say this thing cost me 20 bucks. Lifesaver. Got to have it to hold on to stuff. Well, that's what we're using, guys. So let's get started. All right, so what I've done here is I've set up a stud in my drill. Cut the head off of a bolt and put it on here, and this is what I'll use as a working template to get these brass nuts ground down to a shape that we want to. Now, as you're putting these things on here, you want to put them down close towards the head of the drill. That way it doesn't cause any wobble, because regardless of how straight this bolt is, it's going to wobble around towards the end. So what that will do will cause you to grind down unevenly. Sorry for the vibration in these first couple of shots here, but as you're making the first strokes on these nuts, they're very rough, so you're trying to knock the corners down. As you see, it'll smooth itself out once they start getting rounded down. Then all we're doing is taking out material to make the shape of the body. These two here will actually be more up towards the head, neck area, around the wings. You'll see once we get it all put together. So you see what I mean by not having them tightened up correctly. They moved down towards the drill, so I had to retighten them back up. With this big file right here, you can see all the brass coming out in the threads of it. It's a very aggressive file. With something like this, it takes no time to get these things to the shape that you want it. Now we're going to use the triple-sided file, the little triangle file. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow me to form the edges of the body. How, if you ever looked at the anatomy of a bee, where it's sectioned off, it kind of rounds down into the abdominal area and head area of the bee, which forms the separate shapes of the body. Don't ask me to give you the scientific names of these parts because wouldn't know them if I Googled them. So here we're starting out. You see, we started out with a 100 grit, and then we went to a 220 grit, and then a 320 grit, and now we're at the 600. That 600 is basically to shine out all the marks. And now this, if you'll notice, the shine will come up once you use that steel wool. All right, here we go. We're going to start out with the, we got to brush out all the stuff from the last nuts. And then you start out with the 3, which this will make the main body of the bee. Again, sorry for the shakiness. Once we get the corners knocked off of these nuts, then it'll calm down a little bit. But if you see, just a couple of movements with this really big file, and it's already taken down most of the aggressiveness of the nuts. You see all the material that it's leaving on that file? That means we are taking off a lot of material. The good thing about doing this with brass nuts and bolts is that brass is actually pretty soft. So as you see here, when we're using the triangle file, you can see how much even the smaller file takes off. I tried to do this one time with some stainless steel nuts and bolts. Although I was able to do it, it took me a lot longer. Where this took me about an hour and a half to do, 2 hours to do. The stainless steel that I tried to do took me about 3.5 hours, and I ended up having to use a grinder instead of using files. Personally, I think the brass ends up looking a lot better. So you can see here we're down to the 600 again, getting everything done. If you can see here closely, you see that bolt wobbling at the end. That's what I was talking about. Be careful as you're doing this. Those things are going to get super hot, so make sure they're cool enough. And then as you're taking them loose, make sure you do your best not to damage them as you're taking them apart, because now that they're hot, they're pretty soft. So if you grab them with the jaws of a pair of pliers, they're going to leave marks on them. Take these off, set them to the side. Make sure you set them in order, because now that you've filed them down, they're going to fit together in one certain way. All right, right here what we're doing is we're taking the some slivers of brass and putting it in a slot of the screw, and we're going to basically hammer this down flat to close up that slot to hold what's going to end up being the antennas of the bee. Make sure you pound it good and closed. Make sure you don't warp the stud while you're doing this, because that could potentially cause a problem. All right, so here's that mini vise I was telling you about, the tabletop vise. This thing comes in super handy. What I'm doing here is I'm putting blocks of wood in there so as not to damage the brass, because if I were just to clamp it in this vise, it would flatten all the threads on it, and this whole thing right here would be useless. So we're clamping this up. What we're going to do is end up making the head shape of the bee or wasp or whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it a bee because wasp, bees, they're all pretty much the same to me. I'm clipping off a little bit of the extra. You always point a little extra down, that way you make sure you get that thing, the antennas gripped in there, because you don't, last thing you need is to get this thing finished and your antennas fall out. So let's start with this little triangle file. This little triangle file here, you know, it's good to get started with, and then we just move to the big stuff, because we want to move a lot of mass pretty quickly. Always clean out your files when you're doing this, because if not, it's just not going to cut. Little thing about files, if you don't know, never drag them backwards. Always just push them forward, lift them and push them forward, because if you drag them backwards, you'll end up just dulling the file. I've had this file forever, and it's starting to get to the point to where I may need to replace it soon. But it has done a lot of work for me. This part probably takes a little bit of doing. You know, you just want to make sure that you're not moving too much too fast. You want to make sure you're not damaging the wrong parts, because you're trying to get the shape of this head correctly, and it's basically to be in a diamond shape almost. You know, that gives it, you know, the shape that you want to have. Once everything's all set up, you'll see how it looks. Pulling out the antennas a little bit. There you go. See how it's kind of shaped and cut off like a diamond would be? Now it gives it that face that a bee would have. What we're doing here is we're setting up the actual stud. We're going to mark out where the body's going to be, so that we can basically divide up the sections of the body. I've got these pliers here that actually have rubber on them. They're supposed to not leave marks, but these things are so soft, whenever you grind them, it'll still leave marks on them, if you can see. I'll finish that out at the end. We'll just grind it down a little bit and polish them right on out. You won't even see them. All right, so we're getting set back up here to do the smaller divide of the body. So the body has a little what I would call the waist area. You know, because if you look at a woman that, you know, used to wear corsets, they have like a really small waist, and that's kind of what it reminds me of. So you take this and you basically form it down into a little bit of a groove. And you don't want to take too much out, because you don't want to make it too weak. You basically just want to take out enough to where there's no threads there, and there's a slight divot there. Now we're going to heat it up. Then what this is going to do is this is going to allow me to basically bend it a little bit. And I mean, oh, be careful, that's hot. And I mean bend it just a little bit, because what we're going to do is just make it look like the bee's dipping his head, you know, so it's not so rigid looking. It'll have some action to it. Now on to the wings and setting up the legs and all this. What this is a piece of flat stock. I want to say it's like a 1/16 inch thickness flat stock brass. Sorry for the reflection, but I did shine it up so that I wouldn't have to polish so much when I'm done. Here, just kind of hand sketching everything from the size of the bolt. You basically want to have your wings to be about 3/4 the size of your body of your bee, because that's kind of how they are. Like if you ever seen a bee with its wings laid down, they touch almost to the back legs or the back of the body. It kind of looks like it could be a creature of its own. So drilled a 1/4 inch hole in the middle. Now we're just going to cut it out. Polish it up a little bit more once you get it cut out. You get all the marks off of it. Now we can put it together. So what we're going to be using here is some red Loctite. You can use red, blue, whatever, it doesn't matter. What this does is this allows you to, hey, let's put that on the right way, why don't we? Yeah, sometimes you got to watch what you're doing. But yeah, like I was saying, the Loctite helps keep everything steady. So once the Loctite dries up, these nuts won't back off. So they'll hold steady. So it can be moved around, thrown around, kicked around, whatever. You know, a little dab for every nut. Sometimes it comes out faster than you want. Now we're going to stack the back part here. Like I said, just make sure that you keep these in the same order that you took them off so that they'll fit together tightly. No, I have made these and done these with alternating nuts and bolts where you have a brass nut and a stainless nut and a brass nut and a stainless nut. And that actually looks pretty good. It looks more like a yellow jacket, you know, with different colors. But this one here, like I said, we're just going all brass because I just like the way the all brass looks. All right, we're setting it up here. We're going to cut off the tail end and basically shape in the stinger. This is kind of, you know, to your liking. You know, what you want to do is basically shape it down. Make sure it has a little point to it. You know, you can make it longer, you can make it shorter. You don't even have to really, you can round it off if you want. But I like it to look like it's got a little stinger on it. You know, makes it a little more aggressive. Here we're using a metal polish, a liquid metal polish, and my Dremel with a very soft brush on it. Don't want to get too aggressive, and you notice how black this thing got. That's how dirty that brass is. Wipe it up, wipe off the excess, make it look good. Now that you've got that side clean, make sure you protect it. That's why we're putting this down. A little bit of steel wool to help out before you get started. that gets the bars off of it. If you noticed on the wings, I actually took a Dremel and scarred in what would be the vein lines or bone lines or whatever that is in the wings of a wasp or a fly or whatever. Gives a little bit of detail, a little bit of texture. I find this kind of funny that if you'll notice, whenever I take this thing out of here, you'll see what I would call a chalk outline of the wasp on this cloth. That's it. And then all you got to do is adjust the wings, adjust the legs, clean all your dirty fingerprints off of it, and bam, this is what you got. Like I said, it's a fun little project to do. People love these. Like I said, it takes about an hour to kill a little bit of time. It's not that big, not that small. If you like what you see, like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. We'll get more of these done in the future. Hope you liked it. Thanks for watching.